So this is my digital clock. I'm going to be adding more features just for add-on, but this is the basic features. I meet every requirement. So yeah. Um, right, first I'll show you how time increments. Currently we're in clock mode, and here's my VGA. It's been kind of running while I've been talking, so I'll just let it show that it passes in minutes. I'm going to show you how it can switch in between modes. I'll show you increment wrapping when I work on the clock setup. But first I'm going to show you how it goes in between stopwatch mode and clock mode. So in order to access stopwatch mode, you have to press 1. And you see we're here in stopwatch mode. If we want to go back to clock mode, we have to press 1 again. And we'll be back in clock mode. What I'm going to do in order so you can see that it works kind of the same in timing, I'm going to put it in stopwatch mode, press start when at the change of the minute, and then I'm going to stop it when a few minutes goes by and see what our normal clock looks like. So we're just going to wait until we get to another minute. All right, let's do this. So now that I'm in clock watch mode, I'm going to start it. Now that 3 minutes have basically passed by, I'm going to return back to clock mode, or I'm going to stop the stopwatch with 2 and return to the clock with 1. And as we can see, 3 minutes has passed by. So time does continue to work while the stopwatch mode is in motion. If I want to go back to the stopwatch, just to show you that it resets and starts and stops, we're going to press 1 to go back to the stop. And then I can start it again. And stop it. Start it again. And stop it. And I'll just go ahead and reset it one more time. Okay, so now that I've showed the functionality of the stopwatch, I can show you more about the clock and clock setup. So pressing 1 takes you back to our clock, which is still counting time. If I wanted to, another important feature is incrementation wrapping. So I've done a standard clock instead of a military clock this time. So we'd hope after hitting 12:59 that it hits 1 o'clock, because that's how a standard clock works. I am going to have a differentiation between AM and PM, but that's going to be in my final presentation. But for the part of the feature list and hitting all the points, I'm showing you the incrementation wrapping. So we're just going to wait till this hits 1 o'clock, and then we will move on to clock setup. So now that you see our increment time wrapping works, I'm going to show you clock setup and the way it works. Clock setup can be accessed from number 4. When you press 4, it brings you to your clock setup, right? And so in order to change the values, you must, and that's shown by the state that we're in, which is state 1. Here, state 1. So by changing these digit placeholders and editing the buttons on the keypad, I can change the time. When you are done putting whatever time you want, you must press enter to lock in that number, and then you press 4 to go back to normal mode. Some stipulations I did put into it is that when you put in values, you cannot go beyond normal clock restrictions. So if you were to have a 1 in this place here, and also mind you, we're in clock setup mode, so the clock is not going to increment. But when you have a 1 here, the largest value here can only be a 2. When you have a 9 at this place, the largest value here can only be 0. And I'll show you kind of how that works. Oh, and also if you do end up putting one of those values in and you try to lock that in, it will not lock in, and you will not be able to lock in that number until you have correct limitations. So I'm going to show you what happens if you try to go out of those limits. So I'm going to try to put in a 6 into the 3rd digit place. Let me look that up. A 6 into the 3rd digit place. And this is what I get. If I try to lock in this value, my clock won't allow me to. So if I pressed enter, and then the 4, nothing would change. We're still in clock setup mode, and we can tell that because we're in state 1, and the clock setup is in state 1. So if I were to do that with another value, and maybe I put 2, and I had 12, which is a correct number, and maybe I can change this to also, if I do a number that's greater than 5, it won't let me. So if I were to have this value right here, sorry, my keypad fell out. This value right here, and I put it into my stop, my watch, my clock. I'd press enter. And now since we're in state 0, you know we're in clock mode. And so I'll let it kind of increment from here. See that it does work. And just want to make sure I'm showing you everything. Here is our stopwatch. It starts, stops, starts again. We can stop it, reset it, start it, go to our clock, set up our clock, and go back to our clock.